Just thinking about a person constantly, replaying the images, replaying the intimacy, replaying the memories. And, you know, part of you wants to escape, but part of you doesn't. Because to escape would be to let them go. I feel lucky to live in an age where there's so much on display for you to play with, you know. My attraction to lots of different genres is finding the common pattern. Yeah, I definitely am a kid at heart, and I think music keeps me kind of in touch with my playful side. Use your ears to determine what is shifting the color, but also shifting the emotional resonance. I find that I can get quite stagnant in one process. If I'm writing constantly on the guitar, it'll get to a point where I feel like I've run out of things to do. It would have to feel right, you know? I'm not really a believer in trying to chase down something again to try and, you know, it's like moments happen for a reason. And I think a really empowering asset for a musician or a producer is to develop a vast vocabulary when it comes to explaining music and also in the way that you listen to music. What do they say? You can't go around it, you gotta go through it, right? You gotta go into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it became a meditation of sorts. Perfectionism is a gift, but it's also a great weakness if you can't let go.
Right.
And I see how that can stand in my way. It's really exciting for me to discover bands that are, you know, maybe a little less known, but sort of really doing something different and something that sort of fuses a whole lot of genres and therefore like they create their own. So I love to find the common thread in a lot of different genres. It's just really exciting for me and stimulating. It's ranged from so many different genres, and no one has a voice like Minnie. No one has ever been Michael Jackson. I mean, these are iconic artists that are different genres, yes, but soulful artists. I resonate with soul. And of course, you know, Prince and Michael Jackson I consider as artists that were able to sort of fuse pop sensibilities with a really experimental kind of approach at times as well. So the artist's goal, right, is to convey the internal landscape of their mind, or of course the external landscape of our world. Yeah. Being a believer in the role of an album and kind of, you know, I think it's an iconic piece of art. It's there forever, right? Singles have a little bit of a like transient nature, but I really respect the album. When I think back to how I learned, I never read a manual or anything about Pro Tools or even my loop machines. I kind of just worked it out through mistakes and through errors. It's funny, I didn't even really read the manual. I'm not very patient with those things. I get really bored and I throw it away. So for me, I think the greatest way to learn a piece of, you know, whether it's software or an instrument or a sampler is to just play around, you know, and to sit there and go through all the presets. And if anything excites you, try and, you know, write something with it or try to, you know, just experiment, and that was the way that I got my head around it. There's still much that I am yet to discover, but of course, once you are performing with the tool, that's the greatest practice of all because you're under pressure and you have to get it down. So the more I used it, the more confident I became with it. I'm very passionate about production. I'm not, you know, not just a singer. I want to invite, especially women and people of minorities, to be empowered as sound designers. Don't wait for someone to teach you about compression. Learn it by just using it, you know, and really engaging with how it changes the sound when you apply these various effects and manipulate the parameters. Well, I love to bring people into my world, express my internal landscapes at a time when I find it hard to fully articulate that. And what I like to do with pop is to challenge it a little bit. I don't want to make music that sounds just the same as everything else. I want to surprise people a little, but also make it feel like something you can sing along to and have in your life as a soundtrack to what you're going through. Because you have such an opportunity to speak to people with every sound. People think it doesn't matter, you know, the detail. But it does, because it's vibration. Every little thing you put into a song is going to hit people in ways that you're not even aware of, subconscious. Making sure that you protect your voice by using the rest of your body to kind of project, and that was really helpful for me. She also taught me a lot about coloring, which is, you know, learning where to vibrate the air in your mouth to get different sounds and different tones. If you want to, you know, sort of replicate that Nina Simone tone or that back of the throat kind of sound, there is a certain place you can access in the throat to kind of do that. And in the same way, you know, that maybe a more kind of high-pitched or nasal tone, you know, there's a direct way that you can change the palette that you vibrate in to get that sound. And this was all so exciting to me, especially because I consider the voice as an instrument and definitely, you know, capable of more than one tone. In a way, I think of it as a sort of call to be even more ambitious, you know, when it comes to the fourth album, you know, take that pressure and channel it into, you know, a powerful musical statement. That's the best way I can think of approaching it. This record is a output from a very internal space, wrestling and reckoning with my inner world, the chaos that lives in there, and the contemplative. Lyrics always have to, you know, really come from me, I think. But I really do love kind of building ideas with other beat makers, people like you said, Skrillex, you know, that might have an inspiring groove, and then I can kind of jump on that and build from there. The exploration of different genres is probably quite integral to what I do. I mean, I get inspired by so many different kinds of music that I couldn't not let that kind of seep in to what I do. But in saying that, I'm sure that over time, you know, you start to refine your own sound, and it becomes a little more direct as to, you know, what that kind of signature. I think it comes from an amalgamation of influences, first and foremost. I had many phases as a young person musically. In fact, it became a challenge of mine to discover as many genres as I could. I got a little obsessive with it. Now, when you're feeding yourself such diversity, that, you know, becomes what you create. I've always been a big believer in being really good at what I do in terms of my craft, but also my technical ability. I think you speak volumes when you can turn up as a woman and be just as technically adept as men, and to me that speaks way louder than me, you know, talking at length about how I demand equality. I just turn up and I, you know, prove it with my works. I think it's really important that we get to experience a sense of our inextricable connection with each other, you know, the feeling that we are so similar at our core. You get to experience this primal heart, this deep understanding of how connected we all are deep down. Take each day as it comes, and living in the moment is a big thing for me. I always remember there's like a proverb, this too shall pass. And I always remember that in terms of any kind of great success or, you know, challenges that come. I always remember how cyclical everything is, and it helps me to kind of keep perspective. Well, there's something positive to be said about that as well, right? Because that's what keeps you pushing. I mean, we talked about artists like MJ and Prince, and I'm sure they were very aware of how, you know, many records they sold on Thriller and what they got to, you know, follow up with. I don't think I'm so concerned with things like sales and awards, because I sort of have known this is what I, you know, want to do for a very long time. Regardless of that, I think I'd still be doing it one way or another. Having a technical vocabulary in the studio is really important because we are using plugins and hardware. We need to be able to communicate in the realm of compression and frequency and understand just a basic idea of what these things do. But what we're all trying to do is capture a feeling. So the more poetic language and vocabulary that you can have from an emotional realm is also helping the producer or the musician to become embodied in the world of the song, so you can all get to the same place. You come to terms with things like pain and suffering, you know, and I think I had some very deep experiences over that time that kind of helped me to accept parts of myself and want to share them with others, you know. I think that's like a really powerful thing when you can practice acceptance and share it with others. I think we all had to live with silence a lot more than we're used to in the past 2 years, 3 years. I mean, contemplation to me is kind of a space of reflection. I mean, it's usually used in the context of prayer or meditation. To be contemplative is to sort of sit with the moment. I guess it's the spectrum, right? The spectrum is there's chaos on one end and then there's calm on the other. We're always sort of oscillating between the two, same as our Earth. Well, it's not an easy industry. I think everyone should know that if they want to get into this world. It's like, it's very public, you know, and everything you say and do is being kind of watched. And I think that can be difficult when you're young. I think it's really important to know why you do what you do, you know, hold those values, because then all of these transient things can come and go, awards, highs, lows, but it doesn't affect you too much if you know here why you do what you do. And, you know, I think it's important to like reaffirm that over and over again. Well, it's really rewarding for me as an artist to bring people into my world, that's really what I'm doing with my music. It's really a symptom of loneliness. I don't feel understood a lot of the time.
Sure.
I don't always feel like I can use my words to sufficiently explain myself. But when you give people the sounds individually, now they can really step into your world.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why I make art. So it's kind of like perfect for me. Yeah. So when I started to listen, I wasn't just listening for the song and whether I liked the lyrics. I was always listening for how they were using space. So where were things coming at me? Were they coming from left and right? And then, of course, that's how you understand panning. Were they feeling close to me? Or were they feeling behind me? How was the artist telling a story by the placement of each aspect? It's really nice for me to be able to offer something that can be for the nerdy, you know, tech people, which is definitely me.
It's also me, yeah.
These people. And also for the layman, you know, the person that's not a musician per se, but is a creative and likes to engage the inner child and explore the deeper side of what I do as a producer. Really simply with a guitar, you know, I still write a lot of songs in that really kind of organic way of just picking up guitar and being inspired by, you know, scenery or, you know, just people watching. You know, lyrically I'm really excited by human interaction, the way people fall in and out of love, and film is really... A universal truth for me is the fact that we are all connected through our joy and our pain. I think that we often see a lot of each other's joys on social media and we're aware of all the successes of other people, but we don't realize that so many people are also suffering and that your suffering is the same as mine deep down. We both feel loneliness and anxiety sometimes, and this to me is a universal truth that humans do share a DNA that is primal and has been there from the start of time. You know, I found that if I got a vocal hook in my head, I could, you know, quickly loop it up and have it there as a foundation for us to bounce ideas off, you know, and then, of course, in shots mode, you can decide, okay, I want to go to a chorus section now and start a whole new kind of loop, which would be perhaps, you know, involve a key change. You can go between the two. I'd say the last thing is an approach where I am a student of the world, not only being a great listener, but being a great observer. So watching films that challenge you, that have a wide range of color palettes, that have a wide range of cinematic techniques, because of course, these can all be brought into the studio. You know, I love to think of my songs like movies. Let's go wide angle. Wide angle could mean let's pan all the voices out. Let's get really claustrophobic. How would I do claustrophobia? Compression. The feeling of it will be a little more closed up and shut in tight. Observing everything in detail and trying to think of how examples from the natural world could apply in the studio. And sometimes I'm, you know, trying to block out my emotions when I'm writing because I think I don't want to get distracted. I just want to think about the storyline of what we're writing. Then other days I think, fuck it, I'll just write about the emotions, you know, like instead of trying to push them away, like let me just lean into exactly what's going through my mind right now. We wanted to write a lyric about things that threaten to take away your joy, and we talked about how it's funny as you grow up, you start to lose your childlike sense of awe in the world, and we wanted to write a song about fighting for that sense of wonder and maintaining a kind of childlike perspective on the world, not letting everyone explain everything away for you so that it takes away the magic. Kind of my greatest fear is to be stuck on loop. I don't know, I'm just always been like, I'm not terrified of heights, not terrified of sharks or spiders. I'm just scared of like never escaping an infinite loop. Like, doesn't that sound terrifying? Whoa. And I don't just mean like in an existential sense. I mean, like in relationships, just like doing the same shit over and over again, making the same mistakes, and never being able to escape the infinite cycle. I mean, I think that actually probably is the definition of hell as well, you know? Not just in a religious sense, but also just like the psychological experience of just not being able to escape a certain thought loop or compulsion or addiction. I really get excited by melodies that move and take you on a bit of a journey. things that are a little bit angular or perhaps a little jarring, but then they have a resolve. You know, I think of so much of my favorite music is stuff that at times can throw you into quite a discordant moment, but then sort of ease the tension and sort of bring in something very satisfying. I try to go for melodies that will have that sense of tension about them, you know, moving around and being, you know, catchy to an extent, but also just exciting and having a drama. And I think, you know, that also comes from feeding your brain with as much melodic music as possible. You know, I spent a lot of time listening to Miles Davis for a while, and also even, I guess, bands like Tears for Fears, I consider them really melodic songwriters. And the more that you listen to that kind of music, it starts to feed into your subconscious, I think. I always like to use the word topography, right? Wow. So every part of the earth has different terrains. Making music is the same. Yeah. You know, I think of the topography. It's really boring to just walk on flat land forever. You know, I want to go on a hike sometimes and, you know, go into the valleys, to the Grand Canyon, you know? So I guess loops are interesting, yes, but how do I break out of them? Because that's the human evolution. We're not going to survive if we don't break out of our patterns. So topography is a good way to think about it. What's the terrain? Yeah. Where are we going? How are we telling a story in the arc? That's the perfect word of the song. Yeah. The way it works for me is I kind of get the demos as far as I can. So that involves programming beats, ideas that I have, maybe playing a little guitar myself, maybe putting down a bit of a bass synth line, maybe calling in some friends who I know have better musical talent than me on instruments, saying, hey man, play this line for me, you know, singing lines to them. And then of course, when I start to hit walls or feel like, yeah, my skills aren't taking me all the way there, that's the point where I'll say, well, you know, this guy would be perfect right now. So I think this is a way that I can kind of live out some of my deeper values of not just being a performer, entertainer, but like the craft. Yeah. The craft of songwriting and production. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.